Hi everyone, I'm Airier, and today we're going to be looking at the next part of A Fan With Too Much Time, Star Wars vs. Warhammer 40k, Episode 8. Now, this is going to be part 2, because last time around, I had real life made it so that I couldn't finish it, and now we're getting to go into the next part, and I'm very freaking excited, man. Oh boy. Last time around, we finally got the fight I was waiting for. A Jedi versus a Space Marine. Not one off camera, on camera, and it was glorious. Also because it was Anakin, who's a really good example of someone we know how to fight, who we've seen fight a lot in visual representation as well as in the Clone Wars, in the movies, in the books. There's so many books. So, yeah, it hit a geek note in me that I really enjoyed. So we're going to jump right in and see what the next half of this video is, because this is a big, thick, chunky one, and I'm really excited. So let's jump into it. You guys know the deal. Link below, original video. Hit it up. And when you're done, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Let's get started.
The Jedi finally said, and with Wrecker helping to support Crosshair, Rex supporting Tech, and Hunter supporting Echo, Anakin led them out, grateful for the lack of any significant droid presence on their escape. It was as they were nearing their shuttle entrance to the exit that Anakin actually asked about their mission.
Oh.
Echo,
he didn't know?
Did you manage to get the codes to Mace? The cybernetically augmented clone shook his head sorrowfully, and Anakin felt a sharp pang in his nerves as he considered the implications of losing both Mace Windu and his own master, along with millions of clones, all in one failure.
This is not a deviation from canon, because I know in canon Mace Windu survives until later, and I'm just going to take it as when a certain actor who's well known for going, "I'm tired of these motherfucking snakes on this plane," said, and yeah, that was my best impression of him, and there's a reason I don't do impressions. I just can't do the voice. That he fully believes Mace Windu is alive? Yeah, I'm going to take Samuel L. Jackson's word on this one. Is it canon? As far as I'm concerned, yes. But that's later. I don't know about this episode. I don't know about canon because I never saw past the first season. Need to fix that. Did not fixing something here to the Star Wars engaging it actually kill people? We know Obi-Wan survives because we saw him later on, but I'm actually worried about this now. You know what? I should probably just take a week and binge watch the Clone Wars. How many episodes? There's 7 seasons. Oh no, I think there's 8. I need to take a month and binge watch all of the Clone Wars. Oh, this is going to take a while. Might be fun though.
The bomb didn't go off, sir. Oh. Echo said quickly, seeing the change in Anakin's face.
Well, that's good.
The Jedi sighed in relief.
Also, it's nice to see he's
then
not so far gone yet.
Again, Echo grimaced. I think I made first contact with them, sir.
Surprisingly
the faction
peaceful.
that Warrior and the hallway belong to.
Sort of.
They seized control of the ship's computer,
and you.
So they have control of the bomb now, too. They haven't detonated it yet, but honestly, sir, that might just be a temporary stay of execution for Anaxis, so I advise General Windu to retreat.
Smart move.
Anakin nodded, but
getting
scowled.
out of the Empire's way
wasn't
is
as
a good idea.
bad as losing Mace Windu and Obi-Wan,
Imperium.
but having been forced off of Anaxis would greatly hinder the war effort.
Yeah.
As they entered the shuttle, Echo seized Anakin's arm. Sir, look, I know you may not have a lot of reason to trust me as I am now. I know that you probably don't agree with me telling General Windu to retreat from the planet, but
I love how he's second-guessing himself here, but he made the completely right choice. Get the fuck out. That it's not even that he knows a lot of what's going on, it's that he knows exactly how terrifying one tech priest was. And he came to the completely rational and very correct option to GTFO. I'm actually really enjoying just how smart this character is. And I like that you can see that he has an entire plot line that he could follow in this story, because I don't know what happened in canon. But right here, just that mix of self-doubt and just hatred of himself, which apparently is canon because they're showing it really damn well in this screenshot. But that and how he's talking down about himself, second-guessing himself to Anakin, and saying, you don't have to trust me. It's like, dude, if he didn't trust you, he'd probably have just cut you in half by now. Yeah, it just... I like that this character has so much vulnerability, but he's already proven to be very much correct.
It's, if you had seen what I had seen...
Yep.
If you knew the enemy the way he made me know them... We aren't ready, sir.
Oh, they're really not.
We are so not ready that it's going to take a miracle to save Axum. Maybe even to save the Republic. And looking into Echo's eyes and remembering the warrior, remembering the strength of him, and how many of them had been on the bridge, remembering the words the warrior spoke as he fought through impossible wounds to continue a fight with an enemy he didn't even know, Anakin realized he
God, those are
believed
really
him.
disgusting.
He said as much to Obi-Wan when he next saw him, and Mace Windu after that.
Oh.
And of course,
we're jumping ahead.
He reported this to the Chancellor as well.
Oh, we're really jumping ahead.
Then it seems we must be...
Seriously, man, I was really expecting they would do a lot more on the plan. No, they're jumping ahead to, he told Obi-Wan and Windu and the Chancellor. Okay, so they're moving on. He might still be on planet, but we're moving on enough that time has passed that he's had time to brief 3 different people and one who you'd have to probably find time to contact. Granted, it's Palpatine who's very much curious about this, so it makes sense, but that implies a big time leap. Maybe not huge, but significant. They didn't say in person. Looks like a hologram because of the faint
said
blue
Sheev
aura.
Palpatine, no more than a diminutive hologram in the center of a desk around which all the aforementioned Jedi sat, Anakin included. This is the second place this new outsider threat has appeared.
Oh!
I am leaving the Axiom system in the hands of Jedi...
Second place. Now, I thought this was significantly before the initial contact with the wider fleet. But is this Palpatine giving away knowledge, or assuming that they'll get that he means the place where he's investigating? Or was it finally out already that the other hand was kind of fucked up? Normally I would think it's probably already happened. Maybe I just misestimated time. But this is interesting because I'm trying to piece together how this time frame is working, because I don't think it's all quite matching up, because we've already had jumps back and forth. I'm trying to place this one. I think this one is maybe Palpatine giving away information. I could be mistaken, though. Whether that's intentional, I doubt it. I think that might actually be a writing error. Although, so far, the writing has been highly competent. I might not like all of the choices, but I see the reasoning behind them, and they're done well, which is more important than anything else. So I'm assuming this might be just that he's contacting them after enough time that the other first contact, or what I'm assuming is the initial first contact, already happened. That would say how much time has passed here.
Master Kiadi Mundi, you are to bestow your forces onto him for the time being. In the meantime, you are to go to Rothana, where the survivors of our true first contact have gathered. From among them, I want you to form a team of witnesses and experts, if there are any to be found. Measure out this threat, and then come to me with your results and your suggestions.
They were traveling at the same time.
The Jedi bobbed their heads as one. Yes, Chancellor, they intoned. The small blue image of Palpatine flickered and smiled.
It's so weird not to see him.
Good luck to you 3. And remember, the very fate of the Republic could hang in the balance. Do not fail, and may the Force be with you.
Oh, sorry. It's just Palpatine saying every one of those last, 2 or 3 sentences. That is a layer of irony that it's not impossible, and it makes perfect sense for him to say. But I appreciate that, because whenever you write a sentence where it's like, I know my character, this is literally torture for them to say, but also they're doing it because they know they got to play the role. And you're just sitting here going, irony. I just love this moment right here, because everything he said is so much bullshit. May the Force be with you. From us, the Sith Lord. And it's like, the fate of the Republic depends on you. Well, technically, yes, but not in the way you think. It's brilliant, because they're not doing anything more than what he would absolutely do, and did plenty of times, even in the canon I saw from the movies alone. And just, I love moments like this, because it's irony, dramatic irony, because you know the real bullshit behind what he's saying, and no one else does. Sorry, I am a huge fan of this type of writing, where little moments like this are out. And I don't think it's a big point. It's not a huge plot point, but it's just that moment of dramatic irony that is just so freaking amazing, man. Oh.
A little back and forth where most of the fourth will be coming from me. But still, I think that you all are interested in and deserve to know what goes into how I determine how these scripts are written and how these...
Now, this is actually something I'm more personally interested on, so I'm going to watch this. It won't be a lot of lore here, but I want to know this, because frankly, this stuff right here is just crack to me. I love hearing someone's writing process, so I want to hear this.
Turn out. And there's 2 big rule sets that I follow. One rule set is comprised of basically just one rule, and the other one of a few more rules. So let's go ahead and get right into this. And again, this is a bit unscripted, but I'm going to try to get through it as quickly as I can. So the first rule, big rule, most powerful rule, the rule that comes before all other rules is this. The narrative is king.
Nice.
I'm here to tell a good story, an interesting story, an entertaining story. So
this is probably something that shouldn't be shocking, but it actually is. There are so many writers out there who don't write for that reason. They write for very different reasons. 1984, for example, was literally just an FU to Stalin because, disillusionment of the author. And here, having someone writing for a narrative is very important because they have that in mind. A common novice writer mistake is to just put a story out there. It's like, why did you do this? I believe the third. Yeah, no, that's a mistake. You need to know. Am I doing this to be funny? Am I doing this to have fun? Is it for me? Is it for someone else? But if this is just to tell the story, that is already enough direction to get something down. If you were trying to do something like, I want to make Star Wars look powerful, I want to make 40K look powerful, those are perfectly valid things. But if it's an actual good story you're going into and not just saying my initial premise is power trip fantasy, which can be done well, but it's just harder. This is a good starting point. And having that is also a good indication the writer's competent, which we know.
And Sidious called up Dooku, and they got together 1 billion ships from the literally millions of worlds that they have under both the Confederacy and the Republic, and they went forward and smashed the Imperium forces. Blah. Like, okay, that's not going to happen. That's boring.
I've read those. They're moderately interesting. They're just not very good. They're just pleasant time wasters if written well, but usually it's an early attempt by a writer who's just getting it down. Again, fan fiction. It's not bad. I don't mind fan fiction. Some of it is amazing, and I'm putting this on the amazing side. Good to hear that he's aware that that's what this could have been. Suddenly putting aside differences and just whoomp. For sheer weight and numbers, they could probably do it just because they have access to the entire galaxy of resources still. But I like that he's aware that that's not realistic, and he's not doing it based on the, conceits of the narrative he's using.
Boring. Even if that can happen,
can it though?
In a certain future, if that was a story I was going to tell, I would just write a forum post about it and discuss it on Reddit and have fun in that way. But
Space Battles is literally built around that.
Just for
far from it now, but
a lackluster narrative. I'm here to tell a good story.
Yep.
Equally, if you think that I'm just going to have the Imperium drop out of the warp right over Coruscant, and then as the battle is joined and the entire Republic Navy is mauled to death by Vortex Nova cannon rounds, they drop a bomb on Coruscant and viral bomb the planet, which, I mean, okay, you do have to admit, that would be an amazing fireball. I mean,
yes, it very much would. And is something the Imperium would do. And hell, it might even very well happen, but that's like a climactic moment, especially early on when Coruscant had more meaning. During different time periods, it had more or less. Oddly enough, during the Empire period, it was, but also at the same time, it never really felt important during the Empire. Like the Imperium set. Oh God, it's going to be so hard to keep that straight. Empire, Imperium. Oy. During the Star Wars reign of Palpatine as Emperor, I'm going to have to just make that entire sentence stick in my head. Coruscant was important, but it never felt like it in the movies. That's just my take. Would be a nice thing to happen, but later on.
Its own rings. But that being said, as cool as that set piece would be, it's got to be earned if it exists at all.
Good, he's aware of that. Not surprised because the competent previous chapters. I'm not just going to have one
side casually defeat the other side. Things will be interesting. The story will be good. It must be good, because if it isn't, it's not really worth telling. Interesting scenarios, that's for Reddit, that's for forums, that's for a post. Interesting stories, that's what we're doing here. So that's the first rule. The narrative is king, the story comes first. Second rule set, we'll call these the general rules of judgment.
I should probably mention, when I talk about various other rules, what is king, like he says, this narrative, I'm not saying other options aren't good. It's just your audience drastically changes. It's like the difference between a political tell-all book versus a fantasy sci-fi adventure. The audience is massively different. Both have audiences. But if you write a fantasy tell-all book, it's like, what? No, you're mixing mediums here. Could it work? Highly competent author, sure, they can make anything work. But most of the time, when you're trying to mix what you're trying to do, such as a morality play like 1984, which is literally just hey, look at this thing that I'm really disillusioned with, Orwell really was full on. All of Stalin, all of what he said was his goal, and all of this great future. And then he saw Stalin was just literally a sadistic prick. I'm oversimplifying, but it was more, here are the ideas. Also, they're all lies. I'm in charge. Fuck you. And he realized that. And 1984, Animal Farm were that. His style of writing was based around the morality play, based around the, this is the fuck we're looking at. And it is horrible. We're opposed to here, Fan is talking about how his idea is the narrative, which doesn't allow certain things to happen. It doesn't allow, like he said, those set pieces as the only battle. They have to be earned, which is a very important thing because, again, I'm going to be doing a freaking English major ramble on this one, but it's me, I do that. That is a very important thing to realize because normally people don't get that. You'll get someone who's like, hey, big explosion. That's the story. Can it look cool? Sure. But it is not enough to do a novel around. It's not enough to have a complete story. It's practice. If you did it in fan fiction, I'd give you a pass because that feels like practice for when you do it yourself. And usually because fan fiction has the conceit that you have pre-established characters that you can draw from to get away with a lot of ignoring world building setups. You can still use them and it makes it better, but you get a lot more leeway because people have so much pre-existing knowledge to draw from to make something compelling faster. Whereas for original things that are based on it, it's a lot harder. It's why fantasy is technically harder to write than anything set in the present, because the present comes with conceits. They come with people understanding what it looks like. It's also why modern novels 100 years later are sometimes really weird, because not only are they historic because they can show you what it looked like in a time frame, it also means that you don't have knowledge to comprehend them, so they won't make sense unless you've done research. They become historic because they are glimpses of what this looks like at the time, but also makes it harder to get into because you need that knowledge, the conceits of the time to understand it. Just really useful to know about that.
And these are what cover my standard view of things.
Mm-hmm.
Again, story is king. So even if I deviate from these, know that that's ostensibly the reason why. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into the rules of judgment.
Oh.
So in regards to Star Wars, the Star Wars mainline films will take precedence over all other lore. And by the way, all this is in my discussions tab, along with a few other tidbits and treats that I'll leave for you to discover.
I'm pretty bad about checking my own.
But yeah, that's in my discussions tab on YouTube. So, in Star Wars, the mainline films will take precedence over all lore, with like a single exception I'll get into later on.
What's the exception?
Again, for the it's
narrative,
literally for the narrative, but it's such a big exception that I have to put it into the general rules.
Oh, it's not just narrative based?
I'll try to be as consistent with this kind of thing as humanly possible, but the way it'll go is
the exception
mainline
have to be the
films
40K
come
can
first,
exist at all.
followed by other live-action media such as Rogue One and The Mandalorian, and then that will be followed by canonical animated media like Star Wars: The Clone Wars and...
Oh. That's actually quite interesting. Just in that first 3 levels of tiers, movies make sense because that's what Star Wars was mainly for the longest time. Going into the side works such as Mandalorian, not bad. I don't know nearly enough about that. I've wanted to watch it. I'm also really bad about getting around to doing anything, so even when I did technically have a trial subscription in Disney Plus, I forgot to use it, and yeah, that's on me. Am I still paying for it and haven't realized? Okay, other than the fact that apparently I still could watch it and I just never canceled the subscription. I did need to fix that. More importantly, Clone Wars being the 3rd tier down as an animated action piece, I was really expecting that would be bumped up a lot higher, considering this is drawing directly from parts of the Clone Wars. Parts that I didn't know about because I never got this far, but it actually makes me feel a lot more grounded in my understanding because I at least know the mainline films. I still haven't watched Solo, and I heard it has some really cool set pieces. Haven't watched it yet. I'll get around to it eventually. Just need to do it someday. I'd say I go to a Blockbuster and rent it, but there's only one in Alaska. Also, yeah, apparently there is still a Blockbuster around. It's weird. Huh. It's interesting it's so far down, though.
After all of this, Legends will fill in the gaps.
Oh.
And yes, I will be incorporating Legends material as much as I can and as much as possible. You know...
Oh. Okay, now that is loaded. Legends had a lot of things during the Clone Wars. And honestly, Disney keeps pulling things from Legends when it comes to this time period. It's like, we're going to reference it to make sure you know it's still canon because this is good. And I actually like that they're doing that because it still validates a lot of the early medium. Also, it means that if they ever want to buy the rights to it, or whatever the hell that kind of situation is, now that they've uncannoned it, they can eventually resell the books, which it makes money. Disney will eventually do it if it approves their standards, which would usually be money. But still, though, that's the only part about this that makes me really pause. Legends had a few things after the timeline that normally wouldn't come up. And yes, I am very much talking about the Yuzon Vong. Do I think they're going to be in this? I don't know. I would normally say no, because that's literally a long time in the future. That's decades in the future. But in Legends, the Yuzon Vong were aware and were slowly sending probes and infiltrators well before the Imperium, the Empire, came up. So it wasn't a lot. They weren't looking heavily, but they only struck so late on because they were looking at galactic weakness. This might not be the time they want to do it, but also if this becomes a war between the two sides, I could easily see the Vong jumping in and going full murder crazy hobo. Because that's literally what they want to do, and if it's a weak enough galaxy, they would do it. Do I know if that would come up? I would doubt it just because that would be a 3-part war redoing the Yuzon Vong's introduction, but it would be interesting just to see how 40K would react to that, other than the standard burn it all to the ground, oh god, fuck it, no. Which, oddly enough, is exactly what you need to do to stop that invasion from starting in the first place. Would that come up? I don't know. Sorry, just the Yuzon Vong arcs were some of my favorite, and some that I found were kind of boring. But when it hit well, it hit well. I remember loving the stories and the final resolution, that massive pile of what the hell, I love this, that entire arc was. I really did enjoy it. Do I think it'll come up, though? My bet's on no. I could be wrong. It could already be in the story's later chapters, and I could be missing that. But I don't know.
A lot of you new Star Wars fans may not know this, but the expanded universe was just so massive. It had so much in it, and honestly, it was much more adventurous than what you see with Disney. It sort of gave you the impression that, like, blasters were a Republic technology.
Oh?
That when you got outside of the Republic and then later the Empire, you actually would find that most aliens had developed their own weapon systems outside of blasters.
Ooh.
And sometimes they're just blaster equivalents, like the Chiss had masers and super masers, blasters and turbo lasers, respectively. But then you had the Siruk, who had like the ability to pull your life force out and power their death droids with them, who had like these laser beam weapons that you would have to block in this very, very different manner, and that they could sometimes go through lightsabers if they were polarized correctly.
The one thing I will say in defense of Disney, they are slowly pulling a lot I cannot speak today. A lot more. There's the word. From Legends as they go. I think they wanted to take time to reevaluate it and make it work with what they wanted to do. But they're drawing consistently more from it. That said, yeah, it's still not as bad as I thought it would be. But only because initially I thought it would be a lot worse. I'm not saying what happened was always good, but I'm still going to say even out of all of the new trilogy, still found them at least entertaining. Were some of the designs and some of the other things they changed good? No, there were parts that I absolutely hated. But it never lost my interest. And then I look at Clone Wars, I just keep thinking, I'm not going to rewatch that. Not the TV series, I meant the actual movie. When you really stop to think about it, a lot of it was, hey, we're trying to find out a mystery that we never solved at all, because it wasn't a mystery to anyone watching, unless you hadn't watched beforehand, but you knew because we knew who Palpatine was, and it's an in-universe mystery that the audience already knew, which would normally be dramatic irony, except it never really mattered. Because you're just looking at how the armies came about, and it's like, oh, we're seeing it from the perspective of a Jedi. Sorry, this is my own personal take that Clone Wars, the movie, is still the weakest out of all 9. Not by far. And it's not bad. But I won't rewatch it.
And you had like the Verpine shatter guns. Ooh, I loved Verpine shatter guns.
I don't know what that one is.
Mass driver guns that could shoot through tanks effectively, like they're like with a bullet.
Oh, mass
shoot
driver.
So hard it would like have like a concussion wave almost. But
dude,
they were called shatter guns because they were super, super easy to break, and you have to maintain
glass
them
cannon
really rigorously. And then if you smack them, they'll shatter, thereby earning their name, shatter guns.
They're literally
that stuff
glass
was so
cannons.
Cool. I love that stuff. I love it when the Star Wars universe feels big. I love it when the Star Wars feel more like, you know, like Star Wars. So, Legends, everywhere I can. It's going to fill in everywhere it can. And there's a lot of places to fill in. The movies have not... The current canon is not really leaving us with a whole lot when it comes to the stuff that Legends touched on.
Yep.
So, going on from that, we're going to talk about something a little bit more controversial, the Wiki. I'm expecting a lot of people to come to me with Wikipedia stuff and to be like, hey, but look, Wikipedia says that a blaster can do this, and Wikipedia says that a range of a turbo laser is that, and I can't really abide the Wikipedia.
Oh, thank God. I don't mind the wiki as a resource, but any source that can be easily edited by anyone who wants to say anything, you need to get a lot more footwork there. It's a good resource. It's also why, and I hate being that guy because I hated it when I was in school, use the wiki as a guide, don't quote it. If it has links down below to where it got it, cool, that helps. But it's not going to be the be-all, end-all. And I've run into conversations where someone's like, well, well, the wiki said it's doing this, so you're abstractly wrong. I don't know what the word abstract means, apparently. Okay, 1, I'm usually wrong because I'm an idiot. Get the mistake correct. 2, it can be right, but it isn't always right. And I'm glad he's aware of that.
The Wikipedia will be...
I mean, I already kind of figured, but good to know.
The very last source that I use when it comes to
Springboard
anything else
personally, but more than
that I'm
nothing
aware of. And the big reason is because if I depicted to you a Star Wars battle using the things that are told to me in the Wikipedia, it would look very different from a Star Wars battle as depicted in the movies. And none of us became fans of Star Wars from reading the Wikipedia.
Yep, and this is going to be a hot take here. That's one of the reasons I actually did really like the high-speed ramming maneuver in the movies, because it was visually stunning. It was visually distinct. And it's also why a lot of people's like, well, in the lore, it doesn't do it. It's like, that's one of the things I don't care about, because this is not a hard science fiction world. There are rules that they break all the time. I still find midichlorians way more annoying because it gets rid of so much previous other fiction about how the Force works. And that bugged me a lot more. Where high-speed ramming is like, okay, no one thought of doing it yet. And I mean that in the out-of-context section of the people writing it never thought of that or never had the technology to actually show it in a good way. Lucas might have, but he would have eventually had to re-release his movies again with updated graphics, which he's already done, and honestly doesn't want to be better, but yeah. Personal.
We became fans of Star Wars from enjoying the movies and from enjoying the other visual or audio or written media about this. So That's what I love. That's what I will emulate. That's why I like Star Wars, and that's what I will follow in Star Wars. So when it tells me that a turbo laser has like a effective range of 3 light years,
that's huge.
One, The Last Jedi, which love it or hate it, it is a canonical mainline movie and thereby takes precedent.
Yeah, the one thing I'll say about Last Jedi, if you cut out them landing at the casino to them taking off from the casino, honestly, it's a much better movie. Yeah, the personal opinion, just cut out that one section. You can deal with a lot more, because even though it's a lot of, hey, plot twist, you didn't see this coming, it goes so fast that you can kind of deal with it, where the casino just slowed down. And they were trying to offer a message, but also they didn't actually offer that message. It's like, here's the moral. Okay, what were we getting the moral for? I don't know. If you earn it, that works. It's kind of like the set piece explosion of Coruscant, he said. That's what the casino felt like. And the sudden betrayal is like, okay, I still don't know what your name is. I didn't know when he told me his name. I forgot immediately. I, to this day, don't know who the hell that guy was who betrayed them. And it doesn't matter to me in the slightest. Again, just cut out that section. The movie improves tremendously. Also, if they ever do a re-release of The Last Jedi or Last Skywalker, whatever the last one was, and they just change that fight for what they originally had, because they had designs for all these crazy cool ships, and not just rescale that technically are being told they're bigger, but you can't tell because there's nothing to compare them to, except one person standing on top of it, and that just doesn't work.
It shows us without any question that blasters, turbo lasers do 2 things. One, they travel way too slowly in space to have an effective range of any light years, because even if they could go out that far without losing any energy, they would take too long to get there. No ship you could be aiming at would still be in that location by the time it reached a light year away. That's just...
I should probably reference, to give you an idea of what a light year is, a light minute, not even a light minute, it takes about, I think, 8 seconds for light to reach the Earth from the sun. That is seconds. It could be 8 minutes. I very well could be mistaken there, and that's a huge difference in time. But when you're talking about light years, that's multiple star systems of effective range. So it doesn't really matter at that point. Also, if you're able to perceive how fast the bolt moves, even in just a split-second shot, it's still way slower than light. So, like he's saying right now, it's easily dodgeable.
Just literally years, decades, so long, I can't even tell you. But 2, aside from that, because we can measure how fast they move, 2, they do lose power in space. They don't maintain an equal power, and we can see that by there being a safe distance to maintain between the Rebel cruiser and the First Order fleet. And also, you know, that movie had a lot of flaws in it. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'll be the first person to tell you that The Last Jedi is riddled with flaws that I find quite intolerable, personally. That being said, this is not...
Yeah, don't get me wrong. There are parts of that movie I like, but I'm going to agree with them on that. There are... I don't mind the movie overall, but there are parts in there that just... they did not work. Again, I'm mostly talking to the casino because that's the one that stands out as the biggest problem. Everything else you could at least deal with. The casino was just a drag, and an ultimately useless one that offered nothing to the plot. It was fluff. It was filler. It did nothing.
Not one of those flaws. We see Admiral Akbar's fleet and the Imperial fleet approaching each other in Return of the Jedi, and Admiral Akbar doesn't open fire. I mean, you can say that it's defensive technologies and ECMs and whatever. I don't really buy it. You know, Admiral Akbar didn't know that the Death Star 2 was shielded, and if a turbo laser really does have that kind of effective range.
Also, a lot of it was probably they didn't have the budget originally. Maybe by the third one they had more, and they definitely had a lot more than the first, but effects were being hoarded heavily.
The Death Star 2 is unable to move or dodge those blasts.
Plus, the big thing
they
of
should be shooting
ships out
from
at
that,
distance
from
was
as
safe for the
far
Death
away
Stars
as they
off the
can to either force the Imperial fleet to intercept those shots with the physical bodies of their other ships, or to hopefully start wearing down and damaging the Death Star. So it doesn't make any sense, and I don't really buy it. I think that the reason Admiral Akbar didn't engage at range is because it would have been a waste of power, because those turbo laser blasts would have been far too weak to damage the Death Star significantly.
In universe, that's a good example. I still go with the out of universe personally, but that's me.
So that's the rule I'm using. Wikipedia doesn't reinforce that. That's just one example. There are many, many examples. I will use Wikipedia, but only if it's uncontradicted by any of the other sources I've mentioned already.
And you'd have to look through the sources themselves. That's a good point.
I mentioned earlier that there was an exception to my rule of the mainline films take precedent, and this is the exception. I will be artificially inflating the Republic's numbers.
Oh.
Let's be frank, okay? And I don't want to spend too much time on this because I really can go on and 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 on about this. I really can.
And this is the part that I think is the weirdest. I actually know exactly the argument he's about to bring up. Their stated army sizes in any medium are kind of small. Keep in mind, 40K has massive armies from massive galaxy-spanning empire. Except they actually don't. They have most of the galaxy, the vast majority of the galaxy. But there are huge sections of that galaxy they don't have any control over. There's also sections of the Star Wars galaxy they don't have control over, like the separatist parts right now. But functionally, this is a galaxy at war in Star Wars that prior to that had almost perfect knowledge of the entire area outside of specific locations that they were just like, nope, about. Again, Chiss ascendancy areas and such. But in the areas they mapped, which was the vast majority, they knew every single spec. And it was kind of scary to the point where it was sort of a plot point in the Clone Wars, the movie, where not seeing a planet outside of the galaxy, I should add, was weird. And then you go into 40K where they have massive armies, massive draws of troops, massive amounts of everything, but they actually don't control nearly as much as you think. They control sectors and then move things around as they can because they're always at war with everything trying to kill them. But also, it's actually less control. They lose planets for centuries, and that's normal. They can just randomly find a planet, think it was discovered, find out, no, we had a planet here, we thought we were getting tithed, we did it, just administrative error. All of that, there are examples in multiple forms of lore of that happening. Functionally, Star Wars numbers are way too small for what they have. So inflating their numbers is probably a good thing. A lot of that, though, is something I wouldn't say is an in-universe issue, but more of an out-of-universe issue. Numbers after so many don't matter. If you say it's 1 billion troops or 10 million or 100 million troops, it doesn't matter when the only people you see on the screen might be less than 100. Numbers that you see in background material do not matter because you won't ever see or experience it in the medium where you're engaging personally. It's cool fluff, and it's nice when it's accurate, but it's probably one of those things where it's like, we'll just throw out a number that sounds big. Fuck it. Especially early on, that's probably the exact thought process. Later on, when you got more dedicated fans who wanted to write the lore, that very well could have changed. But early on especially, there's a lot of things that were just like, why are we doing this? Look at the Primarchs, for example. GW was like, hey, how do we get people to buy more Space Marine models? We'll have them paint them different colors. They can buy the same model multiple times, but it's different colors, so they're different. How do we do that? They're different divisions? And then Primarchs came from that as a way to say, hey, far in the past, we had these glorious leaders. It's that kind of mentality of how things developed over time. And this is a good example. Ooh, hit my mic.
25 ships making up the bulk of the Republic Navy is absurd.
Stupid.
It's frankly insulting. I mean,
really only 25?
This is the Galactic Republic, and these ships are not Death Stars. Even if they were, 25 Death Stars.
To put it in comparison, if it takes a shipyard a year to build a single ship, and there's 10 dedicated shipyards, and they only build one ship, even if they have a mothball fleet, they should have thousands easily. Because there's not just one or two shipyards. There's shipyards that pump out ships. And that's just a couple planets. And there's probably billions of planets available in the Star Wars universe. Millions that are definitely there, I'm not even going to question. And hundreds that I know for a fact are named. Probably thousands that are named if you go through them.
As impressive as that sounds, in a galaxy of millions of millions of planets, literally that's what's described, millions of planets. Literally, they could start blowing up planets. Like, literally just let's start blowing them up. No reason, no whatever. Just start with the closest ones. And then it's just hyperspace in the nearest system, blam, and blam, and blam. Yep. You, most likely, wherever it is you are, like, if you just randomize what planet you're living on, you probably will never experience a death.
To give people a comparison, for the amount of people who would die for an entire planet going away through the entire course of every Death Star strike in all three movies, that would be the equivalent of a single person dying on Earth. In sheer one-to-one percentage comparisons, I might actually be overstating the comparison as being a single person. It might be less than a fraction of a person by comparison. It is such a tiny number by comparison. It's just, Star Wars is huge. Like, stupidly huge. And it just never really comes up because it's hard to write that in any meaningful way.
Star cataclysm with 25 Death Stars running around the galaxy, blowing up as many planets as they can.
Still probably wouldn't do much.
That's how much a million is. So even 1 million, and it's supposed to be many, many more than just 1 million. So, 25 starships. That's absurd. 7 million clones. I mean, do I even have to get into this? You know, we had more men fighting and dying in our wars here on Earth than in the Star Wars. I can't. Yep. I can't. I love George Lucas, but this is one thing that really needed to have been parsed much better. So I will be inflating these numbers. I will be inflating these numbers because story is king, narrative is king, and frankly, fellow fans of Star Wars, 7 million clone troopers and 25 starships don't stand even a fraction of a chance of withstanding an Imperial battle group, much less a battle fleet.
Yeah. If the official number is 25, that is, I'm just going to wait for someone to tell me that it was a Palpatine manipulation and not just that he had to mothball a ton of shit because it was so peaceful for so long. I can see that as a reasoning, but that's Palpatine just trying not to waste resources against himself. It's all a manipulation on his part. That said, that's way too much power. There's probably tons of planets that would just start building their own. It doesn't seem realistic. On the other hand, it's the same thing I said before. Throw out a number. It doesn't matter. You're never going to see them all.
I mean, I really can't. I mean, your best case scenario is that all the Jedi get together, fight off the Imperial ground forces somehow through some incredible tactics and genius and strokes of luck and trust in the Force and yada yada.
Entirely possible,
and then
too.
They just obliterate everything else with just their starships because I'm telling you, an Imperial battle group of 5 ships can eat 25 Venators like it's nothing. They're not likely to encounter the 25 ships all in one place. Because that's the entire Republic Navy. The Republic would have to pull back from everywhere else to do that. That's just... Woo! Okay, enough of that. So, I'm bolstering those numbers. The numbers are going to be bolstered to about 500 million clones. That sounds like we're starting to approach the numbers. And again, this is with the idea that I'm keeping in with the spirit of the Clone Wars having been fought mostly by SDF forces. Okay? So 500 million clones.
Oh, that does make sense because the clones weren't on every battlefront. They were on a lot of them, but you kind of see that in some of the episodes of Star Wars where it's where they got there and then they did something. Like the Jedi were interacting with the local populace, and that's what was important. It's also why there was plenty of battlefields where the droids weren't the entire army. There were actually separatists that weren't droids that you had to fight as well. And that's how some of the drama came up in the episodes.
Still not a lot, in my opinion. and 15,000 Venators with support on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that. I'm not budging on that. I mean, anything less, and this is just going to be a war where the Republic can't take casualties. They have to make stellar victories almost, or stellar defeats even, everywhere they encounter the Imperium, or they will quickly run out of men.
Yeah, basically, it would be the kind of thing where the Ultramarines go like, yeah, I think your plot armor is getting a little too much there. Ooh, yeah. And it wouldn't be ironic. It would just be a thing.
Imperium are coming in with a lot more than that, I'll tell you this. Like, yeah, not a lot more Space Marines, but, you know, a lot more Guardsmen. So let me see here. With the Imperium, things are going to be much shorter, much simpler, paradoxically, because they're a bit more complex.
Oh.
First off, the tabletop stats and RPG book stats will take second place to literally any other material.
Good. Don't get me wrong. I am a huge fan of the tabletop game. Sometimes when it's not as broken as some of the... I was going to say some of the time, but no, honestly, the game feels like it's broken more often than not. You just have to play around that by agreeing to play stupid intentionally. Because if you're playing competitively, no, it's not fun. You either stomp someone horribly or it's a mirror match, and that just gets boring. It's like, oh, I know exactly how to win this, and so do they. When it's a balanced game, it's actually a lot more fun, in my opinion. Or when you balance it by just not having optimal play. It's a weird thing because I like trying to fine-tune things to be optimal. I just have to fine-tune it to do something that isn't optimal, but do that one thing well. It's harder, but also fun. Unless you accidentally find out that the rules were updated and you just found out without realizing what the optimal play strategy was, and then it's just overpowered. And yeah, I played Sisters of Battle. Haven't played it a lot. Went in. It's like, oh shit, some of these models are a lot more powerful than they used to be. Yeah. Felt kind of bad about that.
Any other source materials that I can find. And this is because stats made for the games and lore made around, not lore necessarily,
heavily weaken the stronger factions and buff the weaker ones just to make it doable as a game.
But stats mainly, like movement stats,
like you can kill a Titan with a charge of infantry.
Stats in general.
You gotta get lucky, but you can do it.
Tabletop for both the Fantastic Miniatures game and for the incredibly engaging RPG game, they're made to convenience the players. They really are. Even the RPG game is made to convenience the players. Not in the same ways, clearly, because if you play the RPG and you pit a Space Marine against anything, you quickly begin to realize that they do Space Marines pretty true to life, at least in my opinion, for a lot of things. But that aside, some of the dimensions for ships, some of the populations for planets, you know, hive worlds are supposed to be crowded.
They make Coruscant look spacious.
That means that we're going to need a few trillion people, not a few billion people, because there are videos about how population densities would work on ecumenopolises and stuff like that. Please feel free to look those up. But the point is that if we actually have a planet the size of Terra, with as many people as has been cited on Terra in some sources, it results in everybody having like 28 football fields around them in every direction. And that's how much space every person on Terra would have because how much of land has been developed on it. I mean, realize that we live in islands of cities in vast stretches of nothing for the most part.
Yeah, and that's something that I just really like, especially because he's mentioning ecumenopolises. Terra isn't even the worst or the most built up. Only because there's a huge section that is the Golden Throne itself, which is a significant portion of a continent. And while that's built up, it's still the palace, so it's way less populated than everything around it. And I would honestly cite that as probably the only reason it's not as built up as some of the full planet ecumenopolises. That said, what an additional single spire can hold near the population of Earth right now, it's a really big damn spire.
Unless you're in Florida, of course, in which case we're a giant hive of some kind. So,
yeah, that sounds about right.
In any case, long story short, tabletop stats, RPG stats, they're made to convenience the players to make that stuff more measurable, and they're not usually thought out with regards to the universe itself.
Yeah, as in guardsmen can actually do something with their guns occasionally.
Ways, much less with the RPG stats than with the tabletop, but in either case, they'll take second place to everything else. So what takes first place, you might ask? The fluff does. And that is where the Warhammer fans are probably rolling their eyes or sighing heavily, because the fluff in Warhammer 40k is extremely inconsistent and diverse.
Oh God, I just did what he said. I literally just did the entire roll. Okay, you got me on that one, fan. But yeah, the Warhammer lore is not just inconsistent, it's intentionally inconsistent. It's one of the things I mentioned in the previous episode, how I disliked when you move from certain places from this person's perspective to this person's perspective to a third person's perspective, talking about things that have to be objectively true, because if you're not, that means you're in a third person who is an actual person and not just the narrator function. Basically, if you have a function of narrator, you are delivering straight information. If you have a person who's acting instead of the third person, you have another character you have to think about, consider, and think about what their bias, their implicit understanding of things is, what they do know, what they don't know, why they do and don't know. It adds so many layers of complexity. And a lot of people just don't do that stuff. They think, well, this person's my narrator. They're going to talk about things that are real. Okay, who are they? I don't know. Are they going to lie to them? Sometimes they'll tell it because it sounds good. Why? And that's one of the reasons why that works in a very set, everyone's telling you the truth, you see only the reality, you can do shit like that. 40k is inherently broken, but as a narrative structure, that works if you filter everything correctly through, this is the person who is seeing it. We're getting from their perspective. Sometimes we see over the shoulder in the narrator function, and the narrator tells us true events as they perceive it. But a lot of the time in 40k, then you'll get a story told to the perspective character from another character, and sometimes they're just telling a story they saw from someone else. So there's so many layers of various information loss and perspective shifts and covers and different layers of understanding that you have so many different files that it doesn't matter. And then most of it is written as if it's in some kind of document in the future. So you have that layer. So when you get it down, this is the bureaucratic records as they are written down. Is it kind of a conceit to do it that way? Sure. Some books do, some books don't. But it's in there, and they have so many layers of conceit that everything can be a lie because there's so many people telling the stories. It doesn't matter. And that's not even getting into the warp aspect. So I actually like storytelling in 40k, because the inherent bullshittery of it is in your face. So you have to confront the the unreliable narrator aspect. A lot of stories sometimes put it in, you don't realize it's unreliable. And then it's like a huge, that's stupid. It seems like a plot hole. Here though, because it's so open, I like that aspect. I also like it when they have things that are, this is the true thing as they see it. They can be wrong due to outside of context information, but at least from their perspective, it's true. Where you do that in a solid, this is accurate system, it doesn't work. It just becomes plot holes. It's like, well, I was telling you the truth earlier, but now I'm lying. Okay, why are you lying? I'm the narrator. I can't tell you that because I don't actually exist. Yeah, you have to just... This is one of those things that I get very heated over as an English major. So it's good that he's aware of it moving in.
Diverse. And it is so inconsistent and so diverse that the official stance by the company, Games Workshop, on it is that everything is true and nothing is true. And it's based.
And of course, as much as I'm talking about the praises of 40k, about how, yeah, it's a great way to show the layers of reality, I want to point out the reason 40k, the reason GW is doing that, the reason Games Workshop has that bit of lore is because they've had to change it so many times due to their own copyright theft issues. Sherlock Clouseau. I'm not even putting all the... Oh, sorry. Sherlock Obi-Wan Clouseau is a real character who they've never taken out of canon, but he was from Rogue Trader, and they did a ton of shit where they literally just stole things. Not copied, flat out stole. It's like, hey, it's in our stuff now. Mad Max, Judge Dredd, Star Wars, all of that, they just put into a mishmash in there. And they really had to change things. And honestly, that's really dangerous to them now because Disney owns Star Wars, which is probably why GW is going like, nobody tell them about Obi-Wan Sherlock Clouseau. Nobody mention that. Because they will get a cease and desist.
Basically an all-you-can-eat, all-you-can-pick buffet of the lore. And that's fine. I actually like that a lot. I think it's cool. I think it actually has created a space where people can have vastly differing opinions on what is actually supposed to be true, and everybody kind of is cool about it.
And due to the war being bullshit,
everybody knows that that's
it can even be accurate on both sides.
That it wouldn't be Warhammer if it weren't that way. And I like that a lot. So, I take this Space Marine stuff very seriously. I could jack up the numbers. I know that a lot of people in the lore, in the fan base, are like, no, it's not 100 Space Marines per company. It's 1,000 Space Marines per company.
The fuck?
And it's not 1,000 Space...
No. It's 1,000 Space Marines per chapter. Like, they frequently ignore that. Like a Black Templar, who are kind of here. But that's a very hard rule. That's one of the very few hard rules that they ignore, but it's very much a rule that they definitely should be aware that they're ignoring.
Space Marines per chapter. It's 10,000 Space Marines per chapter, because that frankly makes a lot more sense.
I mean,
right?
unless you're the Black Templars.
Some depictions of Space Marines, but you know what? That's never been the way it is for me. For me, it's always been like, yeah, you got an empire, you got a Star Empire, 100 Space Marines tops, 100 Space Marines tops. No, it's like, I like the idea of them having been these superhuman warriors that... Let me explain. What I love most about Warhammer 40k in a nut is just that in a universe of Cthulhu's and like just faceless, horrifying, inhuman, extinct us in a second horrors facing us in every direction.
Yep.
Literally from every shadow, from every star, from every planet that isn't our own. In a galaxy full of these things, mankind in Warhammer 40k does not survive because they haven't noticed us. We survived because we looked at all of that and decided that we would become that for them. We would become the monsters for the monsters. We would become bigger, crazier, stronger, more insane Cthulhu's.
I love that his part is basically the exact definition of the humanity fuck yeah meme. Because it's obviously one of the reasons I like it as well. Everything is horrible, and we're going to out-horrible it just to fuck them over just as hard.
And destroy and eat the actual Cthulhu's. And then we proceeded to be successful at doing that. And Space Marines are one of the big culminating points of that. Space Marines are like the thing that makes us the covenant for every other alien race that we decide to destroy. And
I just realized, based on how he understands this and the fact that I agree with him, it is literally the one time you could honestly and completely unironically say the Warhammer universe is actually kind of a bright universe instead of the usual grim derp or grim dark that it goes with. Because it's still, humanity is going to fight the fuck out of whatever's trying to kill them. Also, if that's against Lanesh, that is a very much literal definition. But we're not going to talk about that because of YouTube.
They're the humans, but they've got no Master Chief. They've just got
a lot of Master
the front
Chiefs.
row seat to their own extinction because of this insane, genocidal, superpowered, ancient alien race has come for them.
I think that would also be humanity as well.
Mankind doesn't get to fill that role very often, honestly, in a lot of fiction. And in this fiction, we do. And that is what I will choose to portray, and that's what you're gonna choose. That's what you're gonna see when it comes to Space Marines and stuff. So, yeah, the fluff. That's what I will be drawing from here, and it will be, like not the most extreme stuff, but it will be stuff that, like 100 Space Marines can be expected to take down an average 40k planet. So expect that kind of force.
Honestly, yeah, that makes sense, because that's kind of what the lore does say. The Space Marines against most normal mortals, they're freaking overpowered, man. Bolter discipline is important because they don't have infinite shots. Melee is important because if you got up close and personal, you got the armor to take the shot. Just do it away with them that way. It's only when you get to the really high-powered, intense battles, like the Siege of Terra, when you're going against the empires that could actually contest you, that you need more than just a strike force or just a few Marines, even just a company. When you get above that level, then you get into the point where it's like, yeah, we almost need a legion at this point. Short of that, most things can be taken care of, and it makes sense because they have a very structured level of response. And it usually doesn't start with Space Marines. It starts with, can we get a few guys in there? Do we have local assets in the army? Do we have a few guys we can get from a higher branch? And then going up from there to whatever the hell they need. Including, fuck it, we're just going to not deal with this. Either ignoring it or destroying it. And ignoring it gets the option pretty often, actually.
And with that, I think that more or less wraps up this little freestyle explanation of what it is that I consider when I make these scripts and stories. I hope that you guys like this, and let me know in the comments if this is the sort of thing that you guys would like to hear more often instead of the previews at the end of the videos, these little short ups. And I'll go ahead and do that more often if that is the case.
Huh. But also, is this his profile pic? Oh, it is. Never saw it in big enough detail.
See you guys.
Cool.
Next time.
Okay, I'm going to be completely honest. From a writing major's perspective, this was just a giant sugar cube of really cool shit for me. Because I like digging into someone's thought process, how they set up their entire writing ethos, how they pull together different bits of information, what they value, what the levels of valuation are, how they judge something to be useful. And the fact that he's going into it is like saying, here, I'm going to follow a lot of the Star Wars canon in these orders, but this one conceit needs to be changed because it's stupid and it won't work. Also, 25 ships, that's it. The only thing I'm going to say is someone's going to tell me below that it's because Palpatine intentionally kept the numbers down until they won. And dear God, tell me the numbers drastically inflated as soon as the Empire came around, because I will actually be very disappointed if someone doesn't tell me that. So yeah, next week, I'm definitely just jumping into the next episode. Episode 9, Dark Horizons. I'm looking forward to this. And I just, getting stories from competent writers is good. Getting stories from competent writers who actually give you a look at their thought process is really freaking cool, man. I wish I'd watched this last week. It would have been so freaking worth it. On the other hand, I was already late and I really needed to fix that, so that's on me. But still, details that I had to pay for because I was late and I had to apologize. But that's on me as well. Yeah. I really should do this not when I'm about to go somewhere. I really should think about that. And then I'll probably forget right after I say that again. Like every other time. Yeah, that's on me. So if you haven't already, there's a link below to the original video. Hit it up. A fan with too much time did a really damn good job. So do that. Already done. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe, and tell me what I missed, because I'm me. I miss things. But I love finding out what it is, because it's always good, just fun to read and get all that info. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.